Ramnarain, the current head of the Agricultural Research Center for the Guyana Sugar Corporation, Guyana's largest employer and sole manufacturer of raw cane sugar. Gavin has been with Guysuco for the past 18 years, yes, since 2002. He currently administers weed science, pest management, plant breeding and selection, environmental monitoring, soil science, and the central laboratory facilities. Gavin holds a Master's of Science in Subtropical Horticulture and Crop Science from Imperial College London, United Kingdom, and has worked in over 20 countries on research and development on climate-smart and environmentally friendly agriculture. As you know, yesterday there was a standoff between the police and squatters on the East Coast of Demerara, who are illegally occupying lands there. Now, Gavin will tell us about the 17 years of research that was totally destroyed, 17,000 varieties compromised, some totally destroyed by squatters who burnt them, and over $3 billion in future cash losses to Guysuco. Gavin, welcome to the program. Let's jump right into it. Tell us about the research that you've conducted there for the past 18 years that was destroyed.
What we do at the research department, one of our main jobs is to develop varieties of cane. Now, this is a constant, continuous process that we've been doing since around 1909. We have the second oldest cane breeding program in the world and one of the most successful cane breeding programs in the world. Now, we traditionally plant our varieties for evaluation in an area called Chateau Marble, the CM section of what was traditionally LBI estate. Now, the way it works is that it takes us between 14 to 17 years and probably longer to produce one single variety of cane. This starts off with the fuzz. I'm sure many of your viewers would recognize what these are. These are cane flowers. We cross the cane and we get each one of these individual seeds we plant. So if we want cane for high sucrose or high fiber, we get the parents, we cross them, we produce the seeds, and that's starting at year one. These grow up into a little blanket. Each individual cane is essentially a variety. We don't name them because there's too many to name. We wait later on down the line. Then we keep selecting them for resistance to disease, pests, etc., how they grow, the amount of sugar they have in them. When they get to a certain height, we plant them out in the fields. Now, we currently occupy 73 hectares of land in the Chateau Marble section. Recently, about 3 weeks ago, we were alerted that one of our fields was being set on fire by squatters, CM44. When we visited, we found out that 420 varieties of cane at the stage for development were completely burnt out. And people placed little picket fences on the lawns. Then 2 weeks ago, we found another field was burnt. And in that field, we lost 16,650 unique canes. These are varieties again that we have developed. In total, the area I'm telling you about that we have the cane breeding, we have 81,730 unique canes. Right? These are essentially varieties, we just haven't named them. That potential is, within those canes, there could be something that we have some high flyer canes that will produce extremely high sucrose, extremely high fiber. This process will take us, or to get to this point, maybe 14, 15 years just to get back to this point.
Wow.
Because out of that, the seeds we plant, let's say in year one, we get 100,000 individual canes. We would be lucky if we get one single variety out of that. At the end of 18 years, that becomes a commercial cane. Now, I'll give you an idea of what we lost. We have about 16 varieties of cane that are now commercial that produces all of our sugar. These are commercial canes. And as I told you, maybe 17 years to produce one commercial variety. The high flyer canes will occupy about 25% of a cultivation. So they are high sucrose variety, a star boy, let's say, would be producing 25% of our income. So one variety of cane generally responsible for $2 billion worth of income to Guysuco. So when you lose 16,650 potential star boys, right, the economic loss is incalculable. So the staff that saw their canes, 17 years of work being burnt up, it was quite literally like their children. Because you nurtured these things all the way through, since they're little babies, to this point. And some of them were weeping and they were inconsolable. Now we understand completely that the squatters are looking for land, but what we're concerned about is a potential loss of income to Guyana in the future. Whatever happens to the sugar industry, you will need new varieties. Varieties are not things you can bring. You can't bring a variety from Florida and plant it in Guyana to grow. You can't bring a variety from Brazil and plant it in Guyana or India.
Gavin, tell me, basically, I never knew that it took so many years before we could actually get the sugar crystals. I never knew that so much process went on behind the scenes. And I think a lot of our viewers might be in the same position to explain exactly the process that goes into the entire from the time you plant the variety to get the actual cane and for us to get sugar. Explain that for us again, the variety and what this really the process is, the 17 years of work.
Okay, now the variety development program is very simple. To make canes that are high in sucrose, tall, slender, will resist disease, pests, and disease. So how do we do this? We have cane in Guyana, and we get genetic material from Barbados, from other countries, etc. We find a male plant, a cane plant that we designate the male. Let's say he is very straight and tall with very large cane stalk. And we get another cane that's extremely high in sucrose, but might fall on a little bit. So then we make these canes flower, and then we cross them. So we get the male pollen and we manually cross them, and then eventually it produces, the female produces something like this. This is a cane flower. Each one of these tiny little seeds is a brand new individual that has never existed before. So we're hoping that there may be 100,000 of these every year. That strong, big, thick, heavy cane with lots of sugar from the mother. So we try and combine the best genetics of the mother and the father. But we don't know that yet. So we have 100,000 potentials there. We sow these seeds out in year one. Look at them, and we look for vigor as well. See a seed that grows very fast, strong, it's healthier than the rest. So we have a guy called a selector. They have to be around about 30 years to do this. Then they select for the strongest cane. And that takes a year to 2 years. These tiny little bits of grass growing up. And he pulls the ones out. So from 100,000 in year two, you might get sometimes 20,000, sometimes 8,000, depending.
So you're telling me that there is an individual that actually goes to 100,000 varieties and actually weed out the bad ones?
It's a job that requires such a level of skill. This is almost an art form, because it's like you looking at your lawn germinating and you see all these little grass. And being able to spot the strong grass from the weak grass when they're just like your fingernail size. And they're able to, and that's down to a lot of years of experience and field work. So he picks it out and he will get rid of almost 3/4 of them. So in year two, from the 100,000, maybe, as I said, maybe 20,000 might be there. So we have to grow these up now. And then we look and see which one is growing very straight, strong, and we can try and get some, what's called bricks, get some sugar out of them. See, because we want high sugar. So we test them and see who's got the most sugar inside it. So now we're in that might take 2 years to do. Because remember, it's only one little thing we have. So we have to start growing them up, cut them, smaller little cane, tiny little cane plants, and plant them, and then they grow up again. So now that's stage 2. Now in stage 3, we check for the tillering, where it produces a lot of tillers, because we need a lot of tillers coming off the main stalk. And then we select again. So at stage 3, we're down to 1,000 varieties. From the 100,000 we had, we're now down to maybe 1,000. Then we put about 5 rows of these canes in the field to test them out. We test them again to see they're disease resistant. Put them in a place where we know they're going to get infected with disease. If they survive, they've passed the test.
Wow.
Very thick. So this is twofold. We're now in year 8, around year 8 now. So then we go to what's called a stage 4. Now we get that 1,000 varieties, and we've now narrowed them down to about maybe 20 to 50 varieties. So from 100,000, maybe in year 10, we're now down to 50. We then take those and we check them for their erectness, how straight they are, how well they yield, because now we have a little bit of a bulk. We can measure how much they yield, resistant to disease, stem borers, how much the borers attack them. We monitor them for their plants as a plant cane. Then we just take that one little bit, stick it in the ground, see how he grows up. And then the first ratoon. So we cut that and we wait for the subsequent year to see how well that ratoon cane performs. So that's about another 2 years. So we're now on year 12. Then we go to stage 5. When it's good, then take it out to the estates now to try it on different soil types, different pests, different climatic conditions. So now at stage 5, maybe we're down to 8 now. Remember, we had about 20 previous stage. Now we're down to 8. So from 100,000, we're down to 8 canes.
Wow.
Year 14, let's say. So we put it in the estate to try it. And we have to try it for the plants, the first ratoon and second ratoon. That's 3 years.
Right? So what's a ratoon?
Ratoon is when you plant the cane in the ground, you just cut it 1 year after. You just cut the cane, send that stalk to the factory, and then the cane will sprout out again, a new cane. That's the ratoon. Then after 1 year, we cut that again, and another ratoon comes up. That's the second ratoon, then the third ratoon, then the fourth ratoon, and then we plow the whole field up again. So what we operate on Guysuco is one plant cane, which is the actual stalk people see as seed cane, that stalk. We stick that in the ground. We leave that in the ground basically, right, for 5 years. Then we plow the land all over again. So when we absorb these canes, we have to do about 50 hectares now, send it to the factory. Remember, we have a small amount of the cane. You have to send it to the factory. The factory has to tell us whether this thing is very good. It produces good steam. It produces good sugar. So those are the guys that have to tell us. And we have to gather that data and decide whether the cane goes forward. So we're about year 16, 17. And then we say, okay, this cane, rats don't bite it too much. It doesn't suffer from smut, leaf scale, frog hoppers, rats, all these pests and disease. It ratoons very well. It keeps producing sugar. And then we say, okay, you're now a commercial variety.
So all the time, sorry, you're talking about this 8 canes, right? That you came down to. Okay.
Mm-hmm. From 100,000, we're now down, at this stage, we're probably down to 1. Mm-hmm. Right? That guy that picked the 100,000, right? One of his canes would have survived 16 years. Mm-hmm. It's now a commercial cane. When we release it as a commercial cane, we then use that as seed cane, and that's what everybody would be familiar with. That's the cane we now push in the ground, and then we let it run.
So the one cane now, when you put that into the ground, how do you get this mass commercial quantity?
You get that cane there. You cut that cane, right, about 6 months then. So you let that one cane grow up, cut it about 6 months, And then you get the little eyes, the little bud eyes. Each little joint has a little eye. You cut those to two eyes, so you get two eye cuttings. That is when you put in the ground. Generally, 1 hectare of seed canes in nursery will give you about 5 hectares. It's a 1 to 5 ratio roughly. So if you have to plant 100 hectares of cane next year, you need to have a nursery, right, of 25 hectares ready to go, roughly about, or 20 hectares ready to go. So you constantly multiplying. But all those canes are copies of the original cane that we bred. So it's like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy.
So how do you feel when all of this such varieties have been burnt by the squatters?
Well, I mean, as I said, I understand the squatters' position, but I don't think they fully appreciated the amount of work that went in. And I mean, I looked at some of the actual staff that have been working in this particular area, and when you see big grown people with their masses almost break down crying, right? But it's literally like the children being destroyed. When you saw like I tell you, the guy that picks out 100,000, and he knows that he picked this baby 17 years ago, and she was ready and willing to go produce lots of sugar, and then it got destroyed before we can collect the data. They're inconsolable. The workers understand the value of the cane as well. And from a research point of view, like all researchers, we do have canes in the ground, and we were okay, but it's just what could have been. You think about the fact that out of the 16,650 varieties that we just lost in the last 5 weeks, they could have been something there that could have produced huge amounts of bioenergy, massive amounts of sugar that could have secured the industry, right, for at least 10 years of its productive life. It could have generated billions and billions of dollars of revenues for all Guyanese.